So today's video, I'm going to talk about what I think is the most realistic, most viable and fastest way to earn your first $1,000 selling specifically coloring books through Amazon KDP. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the harsh realities of doing this. We're going to debunk a few myths. We're going to take a look at where you should put your focus. We're then going to go into niche research. We're going to do some live examples for different pursuits. And we're also going to do this in a way that no one has ever spoken about before, and it's mega important. Then we're going to talk about advertising, then we're going to talk about your attitude, and we're going to cover the things that really matter when it comes to seeing success as fast as possible, specifically with coloring books. So if you're new to the channel, my name is Chris. I've been self-publishing for over 10 years. However, in the last 2 to 3 years, I've put pretty much all of my focus specifically into selling coloring books through Amazon. And I know people want pages refreshed if you're ever going to show your income, which is fair enough. However, I think it's important that if you're going to go the coloring book route, especially for coloring books, is that you take advice from people that are actually doing it. So let's talk about some harsh realities. And usually I never preface anything that I talk about by saying that it's not easy. It's going to take time. It's going to take some money. However, as much as I think this should go without saying, I think for people that are new to this, new to publishing, new to doing the whole coloring book things, I think it depends on what content you have consumed prior to somewhat more realistic videos. And I think the opportunity has been massively misrepresented, especially on YouTube. It's not easy. It takes time. It takes money. The marketplace is very competitive. Now, the silver lining to this is that most books, factually, most coloring books especially that get uploaded onto Amazon are very bad quality. And again, where does this come from? Probably from people misrepresenting what it takes to actually make this work. So another harsh reality again is that books are going to fail. There's going to be a failure percentage to the amount of books that you sell on Amazon, and that's important. We consider this when doing our niche research. I'll explain that as we go through the video. I do think Amazon ads are important for getting those really big sales. We're talking anything over kind of $1,000 a month. I think you need to start investing into Amazon ads. Again, we're going to talk about that as we go through. I don't think it's realistic to expect to make big money without investing some money into ads, but the amount of money that gets invested to ads is much lower than people make it out to be. So this is the other harsh reality, and I know this domain of selling coloring books is very glamorous with lots of different tools and softwares and things that you can use to fast track your success. But really, from what I found over doing this for a long time, is that most of your efforts should go towards really boring things. And again, we're going to talk about that in the next slide. And this domain is filled with so much confusing material with different YouTube videos with different strategies, tools, courses, and software that it's really hard to know exactly what the truth is when it comes to publishing. There's always been this kind of dark shadow over the YouTube publishing domain, not really knowing what these guys are actually talking about, if they're actively doing it themselves, for example. However, inside of the Raydog membership, my new membership for independent publishers, I do show off every single book that I publish, my main pen name and everything that I'm doing for the sake of transparency. However, like I said, those insights are reserved for people that are in the membership, which I think makes sense. So the rewards directly on Amazon can be substantial. I don't know why I've got that in the harsh reality section. That's quite a good thing, but there is going to be hurdles when it comes to getting toward those substantial rewards. So how you act upon those hurdles is mega important, and we'll talk about that in the attitude section of this video. But to make this quick, we want to debunk a few myths here, because again, it's important that you don't get sidetracked from things that actually help you progress and make you money as fast as possible, help you grow your business and your coloring book brand. Things like requiring reviews, needing certain tools, elite advertising strategies to see success is complete nonsense. For specifically coloring books, you don't need any reviews, you don't need any tools, you don't need any advertising strategies other than really automatic ads and a little bit of thought process going into the budget that you have. So the next myth, in my opinion, is that you don't need to spend anywhere near as much as Coco Wyo does on their advertising, which is obviously going to be substantial. This is more of a YouTube comment about how niches like this are completely overly saturated. You need to have X amount of advertising spend, you need to have a huge social media following. It's really not the case. The reality is that it's all about hitting the vibe with your coloring books, having your angle, having a gorgeous book cover, and then thoughtful advertising spend. Just to give people some perspective on what I spend on advertising myself, I'm going to put up a little chart now from my account. So just to give you an example of what I've spent so far in February, we're looking around $300 for the first 12 days. Now, just to take, it might seem like a lot of money for some people, but this is nowhere near the claims that you need to have like $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a spend every single month. We're talking about really smart advertising spend, which we'll discuss as we go through this. But I just want to show you my lifetime spend and how this has progressed over time, because really I don't want people to think that they have to come into this with a huge advertising budget in order to just get started, and that you should take this really slowly and just let your advertising spend grow over time as you get used to running ads and as your books get better, conversions get better, blah blah blah. But let's just take a look at this. We started running ads back in 2018. So prior to that, I was doing completely different projects for publishing. But the coloring books and low content books sort of came in at around this time here. And as you can see, toward 2022 and 23, we started to increase the advertising spend. We had the biggest advertising spend in December, I think it was, of this year, of $1,400, which was unnecessary because I released a ton of books during that period, which didn't actually make much sense. So I overspent on advertising, and I've pretty much still overspent through the majority of this year of 2024, trying to wind it back in a little bit in 2025. But my point here is that this has been a slow progression. Obviously, you don't have to wait years in order to see results. That's the point. I never had anybody at all instruct me on how to do things. This was a case of just learning myself. I didn't have the resources that we have today to get to this point where I'm happily, comfortably spending a decent amount of money, not losing money on advertising, and making it work in a way that makes sense to boost the books into the marketplace and help them stay above the competitors' books. So if you are interested in fast tracking your publishing success, I highly recommend that you check out the Raydog membership. We have all the course content with advertising strategies, keyword research, all the things that you can find this on YouTube. It's just in more of a logical order inside of the membership. However, the main point of the membership is that we have weekly live group calls, and we have an amazing Discord community where you can get tons and tons and tons of feedback, not just from people that have been doing this for a while, but people who are new, who don't have preconceived ideas as to what works on Amazon. It's really an incredible place to be. So all of the live calls are recorded. I showcase my best-selling books, the new books that I publish. I tend to show what I'm doing with them as well. We also once a month do a Raydog review session, which means that we spend more one-on-one time with people that apply for this, so that you can get a lot more feedback on where you're at with your publishing business. Again, all of these are recorded if you ever want to go back through them. We have a ton of information in here. We do this every single Friday as a group call, and these group calls are absolutely fantastic. I tend to stay on. They're supposed to be an hour long, but I tend to stay on afterwards just to take a few questions and talk to other publishers as well. It's a really awesome place to be. If you want to check it out, it's chrisraydog.com. So that's the whole advertising thing, and I think it's really a case of you need to make educated spend, monitor the metrics to make sure that it is acceptable for you to carry on running ads to your books. So big niches are completely saturated, and actually my attitude on this is the complete opposite. I think the opportunity now, and I hate introducing people into this opportunity that is publishing, but I'm just saying what I think, what I've observed from my most recent books that I've published, is that the big niches and the big companies, the big books and low BSRs, they're all helping each other out. I'm going to explain why I think that now. So just to give an example from Southern Lotus, who upload absolutely fantastic coloring books, what I find is that with these niches that have really low BSRs, is that when you enter into the same niches and you offer something different, something unique, obviously something very high quality, what is happening a lot of time is, since these listings are getting thousands and thousands and thousands of views, probably every single day, the Coco Wild ones especially, they get so much traffic. It's absolutely insane. The thing is with coloring books is that people buy loads of them, and I've witnessed this. People on TikTok have bought my books, and they bought them alongside the Coco Wild books, the Vivi Tinta books. They buy loads of them. Colorists are not just buying one book, they buy from multiple companies, and a lot of the time you'll find, if your book is hitting it off well, that you show off in the customers bought this, also sorry, the customers also bought or read sections here, the products related to this item section as well, if you're running ads to products. It's a really, really great opportunity for everyone to kind of just make this like big circle of sales through all these huge niches. And for me, this is why the opportunity feels so fantastic at the moment, is because we have a lot of books from smaller publishers now that are coming through that understand this vibe, that understand this quality, and they're making a ton of sales. Okay. But again, getting to this point here where you understand what these people have done is a necessity. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. However, getting to this point, in my opinion, is a lot easier than people think. So that's my thoughts on the big saturated niches. The other thing that I hate is people saying that successful publishers are just lucky. I'm not going to talk about this much because that's just bullshit. You can only make sales if you have a huge following is completely inaccurate. I'm not saying it doesn't help people's growth when it comes to having like a social media following. One of the worst things that you can do with your time, in my opinion, if you are a man, is set up a TikTok channel with your big man hands and then try and make that work. It's going to be much harder than if a woman does it. So I know that sounds a little bit funny to say, but if you browse TikTok and you watch these like coloring ASMR videos, how often do you see men doing these with a huge following? It's very rare, in my opinion. So another myth, in my opinion, is selling through your website is a bad idea. We're going to talk about that toward the end of this video. So the other big myth, in my opinion, is that higher investments are always worth it. The more money you put in, the higher chance you have of your book selling. And I would agree to this to some extent. But what I find that people do is they put a ton of money into one project. They put all their eggs into one basket, spend loads on a book cover, spend loads on advertising, and then the book just flops. Okay, it's not always going to be the case where you make one amazing project. In fact, it's rarely the case. What I recommend that people do is that they slowly progress toward the point where they're investing more into the projects. That's exactly what I did. Started with much more simplistic coloring books for seniors, and then progressed all the way toward these kind of like Cocoa cozy type of books that cost a little bit more money. But I put a lot of time and effort into thinking about how those books are going to be positioned on Amazon to give them the best chance possible of selling. So let's talk about focusing on skills. Now bear with me because this is incredibly important. One thing to remember is if you want to be successful, like very successful doing the whole coloring book thing, then you have to take a route. You have to take actions that are actually going to help you make more sales. So when we look at things like getting tons of reviews for the books or using keywords research software, using fancy long tail keywords or fancy advertising strategies, when we look at all these things, have they ever really helped anyone progress massively? I'm not saying they won't help some, but do they really help you progress massively making sales? And the answer for me has always been no. I've done a lot of coloring books and I've always found like none of this has mattered almost the slightest. Controversial, I know, but we want to focus on things that are going to make us money. So for example, things like cover design, really focusing on that cover design, making the absolute best, most interesting, glamorous, amazing book covers that we possibly can with the resources that we have. That would include learning things like AI tools. AI tools massively assist me in creating really amazing, gorgeous looking book covers, and also to help with some of the ideas for the interiors as well. So what I tend to do for the interiors is to have AI come up with some kind of sketch with the scene and the characters that I have in mind. Then I pass this over to the illustrator for them to take a look at, and then they can kind of not sketch over it, not sketching ever, but also just using it as a kind of guidance for their main image, because that allows me to have more creative control. Same with the book cover. And then of course focusing on creativity. So I don't know if this is something that people are born with. I have no idea. But thinking about your unique selling points, thinking about the angle of your book to make it stand out inside the marketplace. So the point is, when we focus on these skills, we don't become niche or keyword obsessed like this type of book here. Like this person is probably thinking that they're going to get ranked for things like cute and comfy or the whole buddy, fuzzy friend type thing. But in reality, none of this is going to matter because the book isn't appealing, in my opinion. Now, whereas something like this, and I've not even checked to see if this is selling, something like this has its unique angle. It's got a very well composed book cover with a gorgeous color palette that's being used here. We spoke about this in the last video if you want to go and check that out, but this has a much higher chance of selling than this book here. I can absolutely promise you. And the point is, when we focus on these skills, we can quite easily get from this stage to this stage here. So for me, when people are doing coloring books, it's very strange, in my opinion, to see people who are willing to spend thousands on advertising, to spend monthly on keyword research tools and all sorts of things, but people are never willing to actually try and just progress with the quality of their book, the appeal of their book, and all the elements that go into making a book more interesting for the customer. So let's talk about picking your niche. Now, I'm going to do this different than anyone has ever done this before, in my opinion, because what I want when I talk about books and publishing on my channel is I want people to be in this for the long run. I want people to have the most success possible. Obviously, everyone should want that for you. But I just think that people who are hand feeding you niches, I don't think it helps people stay in the game for long enough. So what I recommend that people do is they think about their budget and then also pair their budget with the failure percentage considerations. Okay, so X amount of your books are going to fail. Okay, let's say 1 in 5, let's say 1 in 10, whatever the case. Think about your budget and then think about the type of niche that you can get into with the budget and failure percentage being considered. So for example, if we're looking at these mega low BSR niches, we're going to make the assumption that we're going to have a higher investment, and smaller niches, which we're going to talk about in a second, are more keyword dominant, we'll talk about a lower investment. So for example, if we were going for a Coco Wyo style book, we're going to have to hire a good illustrator. Okay, we're going to have to probably have a higher investment unless you're an illustrator, which means there's probably going to be a higher reward for this, but it's going to be an expensive pursuit if you think about this failure percentage as well. So if you have the investment, you can go after this type of pursuit. Obviously, you can do whatever you want, but if you have like $400 to your name and you think you're going to make one book like Coco Wyo's, you have almost no chance, I can promise you. So another example for regular coloring books that we would focus on the keywords, which I'm going to show you in just a second. You could probably have the content created for a much smaller investment. We could be using AI. The reward is probably going to be less, but of course with the failure percentage here, the total cost of what you're doing is going to be much lower. Okay, so what did I do first? I started with a much lower investment with the coloring books. I actually started with coloring books for seniors because some of the images were just really simple. The designer I had wasn't the best ever. You don't have to have the best designer ever to make money. They weren't the best, so their cost was much lower than the current designer that I'm using, but that was just the investment that I went for. And the type of books that I was targeting were much more niche specific than these big glamorous Coco Wyo type niches. So let's go ahead and actually do niche research for these different types of niches. So we're talking about these mega niches, and we'll talk about the things that matter for this type of niche, and then we'll talk about normal niches. So I don't know, I've just made this up on the spot here, mega niches and normal niches, but it's important when it comes to thinking about what your pursuit is going to be to try and get toward that first $1,000 of profit. So in fact, this is actually the perfect example here, the Anna Amelia book, Sweet Night coloring book. And I'll give you a game that you can play. This game, I did it at the end of one of our Friday calls, and it was quite interesting to do this. But what I was doing was just going through books on Amazon and trying to guess what the BSR is based off of the book cover. And you will see when you do this for quite a long time, when you spend time on Amazon, you will see there is a direct correlation between books that are selling and how good their book cover is, which is why I put a lot of emphasis onto this. We did a video about this last week, if you want to check that out, about the little things that you can add to your book cover to increase your chances of sales. But specifically when it comes to niche research for these type of books, what I do for my main pen name is I find a theme that is selling. So for example, this is the kind of, we're not thinking about keywords, nothing like that at the moment. We're just trying to find what the topic or the theme of these books is. So for example, really popular at the moment is these kind of like little friend type niche. I don't know what you call these. I think it originated from the Bobby Goods books, and this is a sensitive area because you should never copy someone's style. So that's what you think about. You think about what the main theme for the book is. Is this kind of fuzzy friends, for example, here? Just to give another example, we have, these are all like the fuzzy friend type things Here, can I give another quick example? But these type of like ultra viral cute books here, like this is, again, it's the same sort of animal type of thing, and there's no real niche here per se. They're quite broad in their appeal, but they're just super cute, super cozy type of books here. So in these cases, in these niches, for me, it's not about the keywords necessarily that you're targeting. It's about creating an incredible and interesting book cover and then putting your own spin into these niches. So for example, if you could see that these cozy woodland nook frog things were selling, you could do your own cozy type of frog book. I mean, that's not exclusive to one person, obviously, the frog thing, but for example, you could do like, I don't know, daily frog stuff with like little frogs in cute positions in everyday life. I don't know, but you just think about something that makes sense for this niche. You make the absolute most interesting and best book cover you could possibly imagine. Then you run some advertising, educated advertising spend, and that's the approach for these type of books, in my opinion. These are the books that I publish, like this here. This is where I see the vast majority of the sales. These are mega niches. They can make a ton of money. They have to be done in a very specific way though. So that is a higher investment. Like you have to, in my opinion, progress to that point. You don't have to. Obviously, you can go straight into the deep end if you want. That's down to you. That's where the big money is, in my opinion. Now, so if you're taking this a little bit slower, then getting into these kind of normal niches where you're kind of sub-niching and cross-niching and doing all those things, this is the pursuit that I would take on Amazon for doing the research. So for these type of books, what I've always preached that people do when it comes to doing like keywordy niche type research like this is just to start somewhere. So I started with coloring book, and I came on to the 8.5 by 8, but 8.5 by 11 coloring books is probably a better pursuit than the 8.5 by 8.5 coloring books. So just come down and just scroll through Amazon until you find books that have got a specific topic, such as this one here. So butterflies and flowers coloring book. Okay, so this is likely at this stage probably AI. It's probably been made by AI, which is obviously absolutely fine if you do it well. But what we're thinking about when it comes to these niches is that you probably want to put a smaller amount of money into this, not be so aggressive with your advertising campaigns, and then think about the keywords that you want to get ranked for. So things like butterfly and flower coloring book, large print, patterns, etc, etc. So for me, when we're doing this, we're targeting a specific topic and a specific audience. So for example, when I got started doing this, I was looking at targeting like flower coloring books for seniors, and that worked really well. It allowed me to get ranked quicker and spend less. However, the rewards, they're not as big as those mega niches. Alternatively, if you're looking for feedback on what you're doing as soon as possible, I highly suggest that you check out the Raydog membership. We have an incredible sellers room section here full of people from all different areas of the publishing domain, people that are illustrators, people that are experts, people that are new to publishing. You can get feedback from me. You can get feedback from anyone that wants to give you feedback. You can get feedback on the niche that you're going after, the book covers, the advertising stats, all those things. You can get feedback from me and other people inside of the Discord. And of course, with the membership, there's all the live calls, all recorded, all the course content as well. But this, I would definitely check this out. It's a very positive community, very helpful community, incredibly so, in fact. If you want to check it out, that's chrisraydog.com. So that's niche research. Hopefully that's making sense here, and you should probably go with where your budget allows you to go. So if you're ready for the mega niches and you've got some sales coming in to your publishing account, then maybe it's time to start considering these type of niches. If you're new and got a lower budget, then maybe these kind of keyword dominant niches are slightly better for you. So with that in mind, let's talk about getting started with advertising, because it can help you fast track to some extent your goal to your first $1,000 of profit. So step one would be to not run ads. Now, the problem that I have with this is that most people are not ready to run advertising campaigns to their books, but I can also appreciate that people do want to test running their ads. So as we saw from my advertising account, I slowly built my way up to a bigger advertising spend. And if you're new to ads, then you should just start by using automatic ads. Have a low bid, wait for the ads to start kicking in. Don't fret. Don't think that this is your absolute everything, and if the ads don't work, then it's a failure. Publishing is bad, blah 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 blah. just take this really, really slow. If you're new to publishing, just test some automatic campaigns. Don't create too many campaigns here. You need to give your book time in the marketplace, and you need to give the advertising campaigns time to pick up on what your book is doing. You need to give the ads a time to settle, which I'm going to explain in a chart in the next slide here. Also, one thing here, if you're selling coloring books, you're probably between $6.99 and $9.99, so they're not going to make any profit from, well, you might make some people do. If you're in the UK, you probably won't, because of the 20% that we pay on top of advertising spend. It's very hard, so you have to make ads work for you in a very specific way, where you focus on making organic sales, which is why I love those mega niches, because the organic sale percentage can be incredible if you get this right, which means that you're just using ads to boost your book and then run just for the sake of running them to capture emails or whatever it is that you're doing at a break-even point, which of course it can help you stay above the competitors' books as well. Another big thing, only leave ads going if it makes sense. Big mistake, people get absolutely committed to one book and one campaign. They leave it going, they lose a ton of money. So by making sense, I mean, you should look at your advertising metrics. Look how low you can get your cost per click. Look at the conversion rates of the books. Look at the click-through rate. Look at all those things to see if it makes sense to carry on running ads to your book. So just to talk about giving ads time in the marketplace. Now, this is not going to be set in stone, but there is definitely something that we need to consider here when we start advertising campaigns for our book. So what I'm going to show you is the journey of my advertising campaigns for my most recent book, which was published toward the end of November. So just going to get the pen out here to show you a few things, what I mean by this, giving the ads time in the marketplace. So if you don't know what this is just a historic chart for the BSRs. So you can't see them on the screen here, but at the moment the book is like 4,000. Up here the book is like 400,000 or whatever it is, nearly 500,000. Okay, so the book gets launched down here and it just sits there whilst the advertising campaigns are getting reviewed. So as things are happening in this period here for the first, let's say 10 days here, there's a lot of like up and downs here. Amazon is trying to find the right way to target your book. You're getting indexed and all those things. So there's going to be this period where it's a little bit up and down when you launch a book. So you have to give it a little bit of time. Even if the advertising stats don't look that good at this point, you still need to give it a little bit of time. So I ran the advertising campaigns for this book for about 2 months in this period here. Not quite 2 months, I don't think it is, for this period here. Now at this period here, we've been monitoring the whole time to make sure that the advertising spend makes sense. So we were getting really good metrics in terms of the conversions. The cost per click was low, so we were running the ads at a break-even point, which means we could really comfortably just leave the ad spend going. We're making these kind of free sales during this period. Now, if you notice here, there's a drop. It just goes doink and it drops down to around a 5,000 BSR. Okay, so during this period, what we're finding is that we're still mainly getting advertising sales, maybe 20% organic sales at this point, like 100% advertising from this point up to maybe here. I don't know, this is becoming a mess, but the point is the organic sales need to take over in these big niches. So from here on up until today's date here, we're looking at around, I think it's 80 to 90% organic sales. Okay, so there is something to be said about leaving your book in the marketplace for a long period if it makes sense to do so. So I have had situations where the book has just taken off organically much quicker. It doesn't mean you have to run ads for 3 months or 2 months or 1 month. You just have to monitor. You just have to give it time past this settling point and monitor how it does. Okay, so I've had books that take off after this point here, after this point here, but hardly, just for the sake of some numbers here, I don't run ads for more than, like 3 months if it doesn't make sense to do that. If the book is going to take off, it tends to take off within that sort of first 2 to 3 month period. So with that in mind, I think it's important to know, like, at what point are your books going to be good enough to sell? How do you progress to this point that maybe Chris is talking about and he's showcasing these other people doing well? How do we get to that point So your book is good enough when it sells. I think that's a bit of a lame way to put this, but that's the case. We're always progressing toward the point where we get to this point where the book is just starting to sell. So that is going to come with time, that's going to come with quality, and it's going to come with making these kind of upgrades. I think I watched Sean refer to this as upgrades in a video that he made, but it's very relevant. And you can do this by introducing new techniques and improvements into each book that you publish. So the point is that you do this as soon as possible. You grasp this, you make these changes and improvements as soon as possible. So things like adding shadows and shading to the illustrations on your book cover, creating better composed interiors, so thinking about the line thickness, the white space, making the cover images more interesting. Okay, so doing the bare minimum with your book cover is never going to work in the coloring book domain. Working on color contrast, working on the title placement, and homing in on your target audience better, all these things over time, they add up to creating books that sell really, really well on Amazon. So sticking on this topic of progressing with your books and your book covers, specifically your book covers, what I recommend, and just a little test that you can do for anyone that is publishing coloring books, is to do this kind of thumbnail test where you take a screenshot of your competitor's book. So just whatever niche that you're going after, take the first page of results, take a screenshot of that, put that into Canva, just so you can see what the absolute best-selling books look like and how they stand out, the commonalities across the book covers, and then put your book into there. So paste your book cover into there to mock up what it looks like versus these other books here. And if you can't see the commonalities when you zoom in, especially if it doesn't stand out from a thumbnail format, if you can't see your book standing out, or you can get someone else's opinion on this, it probably means that you're not at a stage where you're going to be getting into these bigger niches. For example, this book cover here, we put this amongst the best sellers. It looks completely out of place. And the point is that you progress. And again, I don't think it's as hard as people think it is. We progress to a point where we have really, really awesome book covers. And again, people don't make the effort to work on this side of their publishing business when it makes the most sense. I can promise you that for these niches. So all these things, they add up, in my opinion, to helping you get to your first $1,000 of profit. But we do need to talk about people's attitude with getting to this point, because some people's attitude is terrible. And whilst I'm not the type of person to try and get people all excited and motivated, I'm not the person that wakes up at 5 a.m. and does yoga on a hill. But we do need to talk about this because it is something that impacts your success without a shadow of a doubt. And in my opinion, you have to be real. You've got to reset your brain to a complete middle ground with what you hear on YouTube, what you think yourself, blah, 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 blah. Because what you're going to find is that there's going to be two extremes that you hear about. One is it's all saturated. You can't do it unless you're Coco Wyo. The other side is going to be, hey, make $1,000 a day with this niche here. The reality is going to be set pretty much in the middle here, so that you need to reset this so that you have realistic expectations. You know that you're going to be doing this for a little while. Everyone's results are going to be different depending on the stages that they're at, the skills that they have, the understanding they have. You just have to reset your brain to be in the middle here. So another thing that I find is that people get completely bent out of shape, meaning people get so flustered and frustrated over every single hurdle that comes their way. You need to be someone that does not get bent out of shape. You need to be someone that solves problems. So when you are presented with a problem, you do everything you can to fix that problem. You focus your day onto that problem until it is resolved. It's going to happen. It's always going to happen. It's not easy. This is what you have to put up with. I hate saying this, the whole treat it like a business thing, but it is kind of, it should be a slice of your business. It means you're going to be in this for the long run, basically. And especially if you're hiring illustrators, then I'm already going to assume that you're interested in having a website, that you're interested in collecting people's emails and selling people things later on your website and things like that. Okay, it's a long-term pursuit. In my opinion, you shouldn't just be thinking about selling books on Amazon if you're hiring an illustrator, because it means you're probably super serious about working with an illustrator and creating amazing brand which you want to expand beyond Amazon, I can promise you. Okay, So the other thing is that you should probably question unrealistic claims in this domain. Like for some reason, the standard of what has become acceptable to talk about, especially on YouTube, is appalling. Some people think that I'm appalling. Whatever, that's fine. But I think making claims that just introduce people into publishing to buy a course or to buy a tool, $2,000 a day, $40,000 a month, whilst it's great to be optimistic, and I would always recommend people do be optimistic and dream, I think you should question these type of claims, because it makes the business look much easier than it is, and it promotes a quit culture where people get so excited, they publish one book, they realize it's not easy, so they give up, which is not the type of person that I am interested in dealing with. So going beyond your first $1,000, I think this is important. You want to consider where you're going to be in the next 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, however long, whatever. This is the long term. You want to consider where you're going to be, which means, do you really want to be 100% dependent on Amazon your whole journey? So I've watched a few videos about people talking about websites recently, whether they're good, whether they're bad. I think it's an amazing pursuit as part of your business. So really, Amazon, selling on Amazon, in my opinion, is going to be kind of this like top of the funnel, and having your website and all the upsells and things like that, maybe even a subscription service, is going to be where the real money is, the real safety with your income. So that means doing things like capturing emails, having a website with those offers on them, building up your social media presence and things like that. So Amazon, in my opinion, is amazing. It's a great place to be. I'm not saying it's not, but I think if you are super serious, then you should think about websites and email captures and those things. And in fact, funny enough, today I think we actually had our first book sale through our website, which is fantastic. It means that there is a potential there, and it's the start of actually building away from Amazon and getting customers trained up to buy through your website and not just through Amazon. So super interesting pursuit. I do talk about all this inside the Raydog membership. I do this on the live calls. I update people with what my website looks like, what I'm offering as a freebie to capture people's emails, how I'm capturing emails from the books that I sell on Amazon. All those things I talk about inside of the membership. Again, if you want to check that out, it's chrisraydog.com. We have pretty much everything there if you want to get started. So if you're new to publishing, we have a get started section here with a kind of get started case study. We've got all the niche research, advertising, launches, everything. If you're motivated and you learn better from course content, and this is going to be a great place for you to be. It comes with the membership cost of the $47 from day one. You get access to all of this. Nothing is high cost. It has all the information you could ever possibly want from course content. And of course, we have some case studies. Then we have the Raydog Live section, which gets recorded. And then on top of this, we have the Discord where you can come in, get feedback, and be a part of what is an incredible community at this point. So if you want to check that out, it's chrisraydog.com. That is it for this video. I'll see you in another video very soon.